Hey, it's William Christopher Ford with another episode of 52 Masters. In this installment, it's my good friend, Professor Efrain Sevilla. He's going to go over some wrestling takedowns as well as some Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So that being said, let's get to training.
I am 51 years old. I've been a practitioner of Okinawan Shorin-ryu karate since I was 7. There was some who would call me a master. I assure you, I am not. I believe that the true expert is someone who still has a student's heart and a beginner's mind. This year, to celebrate turning 52, I'm setting out to learn from 52 other disciplines, each from its own master. Some things I've tried before, others I'm a first-day beginner, like anyone else. 52 weeks, 52 new skills. I'm William Christopher Ford, and this is 52 Masters.
And again, what we're trying to do is here, we can use it as strikes to get out of the way. When you think about it, when there's no strikes involved, and we're talking about gripping, you're trying to go for a grip. Now, I want you to grab me. No, I don't want you to grab me. No, I don't want you to grab me. No, I don't want you to grab me. My hands are always up, so just always thinking that it might be a strike, but same thing, you're just trying to grab me. No. And now I'm going to hold it. I'm going to go for my grip. I'm going to go for my grip. His hand is up. Go for my grip. Go for my grip. Go for my grip. Go for my grip. Don't try to wrap. I'm just going to, this is like a parry, but parry grab. As I rather go for the wrist, and as I get better, then I'll grab cloth at the end. Parry, boom. So we just grab. Yes, that's what I want right there.
Monkey grip.
Yes. Because, and also you're pushing it toward me, as opposed to doing all this, because what you're going to do is you're going to follow my direction, which will then allow you to go into underhook. Yes. See that? Yes. That's what I'm trying to work on. Push it in, because if you want me to yes. Don't, just push right in. Yes. Yes. And the hand comes in, step out. And then the idea here, once I enter, I own the arm if I can. We're going slow. So the first thing is just to go with the flow, come in, get out of my way. Other side, boom, redirect, come in, get out of my way. Boom, come in. And now slowly. Yeah. Hands right here. Good. And then you step back with your right leg. Yes. Then come around, hands are up, ready? See how you but really get that deal. Boom, redirect, start to yeah, then they shoot. Boom, then shoot. This way. Yes, right, yes. Here. Boom, redirect. Come in, put the arm. So from here, same thing. I'm not leaning over right now. I'm up here, open up my chest, step back. As you come around from here, I'm going to open you up. Step back. And the same thing here. I'm connected. Everything's connected here. So now all I have to do is drive you down. I keep the arm. Trap the shoulder. Step over. As you can already tell you already want to tap. It's already isolating. I can tap this, break the arm this way. Arm back and coming down, hugging, sitting, pinching. That's a good one. pull on the arm. Yeah, you want to make sure my shoulder does not come down. Good. And as you pull, as you drag me, you're coming in too. Alright, so boom. As you grab here first, step in. Yes. There, look up, yes. I'm already feeling how face down. Now, when you slide this down, yes. Yep. One time here, I just lean. Go wide, and I'm connected. From here, step in. Connected. Connected. There's no space. Connected. So you're loaded on. Nice and easy. Doesn't take much. I begin to teach this to make sure I maintain connection. This is why I drop in. Why I drop in. You're not. Hop. Get in the space. Come in. Hop. Get in the space. Get in the space. And one. Now I'm connected. Stay connected. Stay connected. That comes in here. I'm attached. Run it over back. We come in.
Thank you so much.
That was awesome.
Fantastic.
¿Cómo está? ¿Todo bien?
Muy bien, gracias. Thank you.
We have to put in a little bit of Spanish,
Yeah.
just a little bit. I'm not fluent, but I'm learning. There's this man over at the local gas station, and every time he comes in, he teaches me a little bit. So hopefully in 10, 15 years, I'll be able to have a fluent conversation with
Maybe
you.
I will too. My Spanglish is very good, but
Well, listen, thank you so much. Great seminar. It was kind of cool because we actually had 4 people teaching the seminar. Cindy Omatsu, who we saw in a previous episode of 52 Masters, and we also had yourself, Professor Melissa Howder, and we had Professor Jocelyn Chang. So it was really nice because everybody kind of focused on a different aspect of jiu-jitsu.
yeah, it really was nice.
It was a great energy, just as I said before, it was just the right amount of people. Everybody was cool, we didn't have any jerks,
It's always nice.
super aggro people who were like, they don't let you go even when you're tapping,
Yeah.
so it was really, really great. How did you get involved in martial arts and specifically jiu-jitsu? I know you used to wrestle in high school, so let's go back to the beginning.
I used to, well, just like I think a lot of us, watching Bruce Lee on film one time and just like, wow, that's some really cool stuff.
Sure.
And then around that time, I fast forward a little bit, then the first thing I really gravitated to was wrestling.
Okay.
And then I wrestled in high school.
What high school did you go to?
De La Salle in Concord, California.
Okay.
And it was a really, one of the things besides the wrestling was my coach. And he was the first one who, he was like in many ways, it was more about his attitude that I really appreciated. And that was something I always liked about martial arts. Like even if it was corny, the Kung Fu show, same thing was the attitude, him trying to be peaceful, just trying to be calm through anything. That, the fight scenes were, when you look back, but it was cool at the time, right?
Well, sure.
Yeah, it was cool, and you were like, oh, that would be cool. But it was really more how people carried themselves. And so with my coach, Pat Martucci, he just was, and already my dad had died when I was 9 or 10.
Okay.
So, he was just a really good male figure in my life that I needed at the time. And guy was also first one who introduced me to being fit, because most wrestlers are fit, but he was like chiseled out of granite.
Okay.
It was amazing. Like he was just like man, it just fit, and that was like a big thing.
I gotta tell you, wrestlers, man, are like the toughest people, man. Just conditioning and used to the grind.
Yeah.
And just, I mean, high tolerance to pain and super stamina. You know, just amazing people.
It is. It really is. I think people, if you've never wrestled, you just don't know.
Right.
You just don't know. I mean, you're talking hot rooms all the time.
Right.
Because in wrestling you do not ever relax. There is no stepping back. There is no. It's always going forward.
Yeah.
And it used to be where it was a thankless sport in the sense that you couldn't. I mean, the what you would shoot for is the Olympics, but that was it. Afterwards, what could you do? And so, what was really cool at the time too is wrestlers. You hear them becoming doctors, becoming lawyers, because just the drive to do something and stick it out, I think, really transferred to life. That was one of those things that I really dug. And because of that, and so throughout those years is when I started meeting people with martial arts, 'cause again, I loved it. I didn't do any formal training, but I already had friends that did karate, did kung fu, and we would just play around.
Okay.
And that's how it kind of like got me going. And then it wasn't until 2000 when people started talking about Royce, and because he had just, UFC first came out, and you see the skinny young guy, and oh shit, he's on his back, oh no, and all of a sudden this big guy's tapping like crazy.
Sure.
And that was just, so I lived in San Francisco Bay Area, and there was no jiu-jitsu schools around at the time. There was like maybe two. And then when I used to work at a rental yard, a gentleman walked in with a Gracie sticker on his back. I said, "Oh, you do that?" And Dwayne, he was my first coach. He was teaching out of his small Kempo school that he did. Okay. And it was a nice little location, a corner in San Francisco. And that's when I got my first bite. My uncle at the time, my wife's uncle, Art Suarez, who just recently got his black belt too, and he's 69.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was really cool that he finally did it.
Wow, that's terrific.
Yeah, it was really neat because he started way back before me. He did Gracie Garage days, but he, because of life and whatever, would jump around and do different things. Sure. So it didn't happen until recently. But at the time, my wife said, "Oh, you should meet my uncle's really into it too." So we did, and he's the first one to introduce me to Royce at the time, and it was funny little story, really quick. So I went to the academy when I was in Torrance, and I went upstairs. I'm like, "Oh, I'm going to meet Royce." And so like there he was, and I'm like, "Oh, there's the place." It was really cool to be there. Yeah. And all of a sudden, like Royce comes up, and Art's like, "Oh, I want you to meet my nephew." And so I'm shaking his hand, and then Royce is just like this, looking down at me, and looking up, and looking down, and then looking up at me, but with like a serious face. I was stepping on his foot. I didn't realize I was doing that, and it was like, and I was just like, "Oh my gosh!" I'm like, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." Like, I was like, that was.
You must have been like just so nervous. You didn't realize.
Yeah, I didn't realize.
And then you thought he was going to kill you.
I did, because he was giving me this look like, is he challenging? What's he doing? Like, it was hilarious. I look back now and I laugh. It's like, that's how I met Royce Gracie.
That's a good story.
That was funny.
I actually, I got a chance to train with Professor Royce and Professor Horion back in the day when before the Gracie Academy, before UFC, when they had this house on Calle Mayor, and it was in the garage, and you could go and pay $20 for half an hour, and you'd either get Horion or you'd get Royce. And at the time, it was like, wow, this is expensive, right? You know, little did we know that it's like I would gladly pay $20 for half an hour of the time, right?
Yeah.
You know, but at the time I was just doing karate, and I had taken a class at El Camino with the Aikido instructor Mitz Yamashita, who taught the self-defense there, and he was studying with them at the time, and he actually was instrumental in bringing them to El Camino, and you know, he said, "I've got some guys who are from Brazil, and they're doing jiu-jitsu, and they're really amazing, and it's going to be one of the premier arts. And everybody was kind of like, huh, and that's when they actually came, and people challenged them, and that they filmed it, and it became part of Gracie in Action 1 and Gracie in Action 2
Great tapes.
on VHS. And if you look closely, you can see a short-haired, very young version of me kind of in the background, checking it out. And what I'd realized, prior to seeing them, I was like, I could just sidekick a guy or whatever, and I was just like, wow, these guys are so quick at closing the gap and doing the takedown, and a lot of it was the, around the body and then the foot tripping behind the leg, And I said, at the very least, I got to learn how to get up off the ground. So I actually called Horion at his house. And I remember calling him on my mom's rotary phone. They were starting to introduce touch phones at the time, but my mom still had her rotary phone. So I was like, and I was like, may I speak to Horion, please? And
that's funny.
He was very nice. He said, oh, by all means, come down. And I was able to learn a few things in Upa and things like that, just so that I could get up off the ground. And at that time, this was pre-UFC. Hoist spoke only a few words of English. Horion was quite fluent at the time. But it was a pretty amazing experience looking back at it now.
Yeah.
Obviously the UFC has come so very far from those first days, but I think that. These two gentlemen in particular, you got to credit with, the explosion that occurred, because I remember people watching the first UFC and they're going, oh, this little guy doesn't have a chance. He's going to get killed. And then, we saw the result. After that.
That was ultimately the goal, and it really was, and it just opened up truly the ground in a different way. Because most people, think, oh, we're only going to be on the ground for a second and then get back up, but you realize it's not. Sometimes it's not that easy. Sometimes
it's not always that easy, But it seems like the wrestlers adapted fairly quickly,
Yeah, definitely.
And then then you see guys like the strikers who everybody now the game is totally different, where everybody has to know everything. You can't specialize, I think, in one thing and do well in that particular arena.
Yeah, you have to really. I think as all of us as martial artists have to understand that we all love our art, but there's some weaknesses in some of them that we have to realize and be honest about them and train about them, right? Train where those are.
Exactly.
The approach to jiu-jitsu is different. It is different.
Yeah.
There, most people our size and my size, are fast and explosive and boom, and so it's been really interesting to learn these different approaches from people I think that I can relate to more.
Well, talking about different approaches, what I like about your approach is that you also focus on getting from the standing to the ground. And with all due respect, a lot of instructors who do jiu-jitsu, they never leave the kneeling position, or it always starts on the ground. But the question is always, well, how do we get there? So I like that you perhaps bring in some of your wrestling background, and you go from standing to clinch to takedown to ground, where you can work your jiu-jitsu, and you can also add strikes or whatever it is, which I know you do in your training too. Is what happens if somebody tries to punch you, and it has been said, like modern sports jiu-jitsu, there's a lot lacking, because it's all about the points, or it's all about stalling, or it's all about these really, really fancy moves, but there's no self-defense application anymore with that. What's your thought on that?
Yeah, that is one of my, being lucky enough to train so many places, I think that's the one thing that's missing in a lot of these places. They don't teach stand-up. The thing is, like, I even have some people that are training, like, what, you don't want to go to the ground? And I'm like, no, you don't want to go to the ground, really. I mean, we train to what happens if we go to the ground. In my opinion, the way I view it, I've trained in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to understand what happens when I'm down here. How can I move intelligently without being like a fish out of water, just flopping all over the place. and it is, so when I go and that somebody does teach something stand up, it's usually just a double leg or something that in my head might not transfer well out there, right? And so definitely it's been a big part of my approach to jiu-jitsu, and more of late it's been more of like, to me, as I study more about jiu-jitsu used to have it all, and then people branched off. Some people stuck with the striking, some people did with the throws, and then some people did the ground, and they just branched off from there. And in my head, with my own personal development, I'm trying to like put it all together again, and become a person that does it all in that sense. And so, so you can see that with I think with judo, right? That they emphasize a lot of throws and takedowns, and some time on the ground, and but that was Joe Kano's. His approach was more about like how can we train safely? How is your character being developed here? It was a lot deeper than I think what we see now, and even back then, from what I've seen, too. And people can correct me if I'm wrong, but like throws, I never came down with throws. Like that person went down. I did not fall down, and so that was kind of my thinking of how I train. Like how can I think about it like in Chris Howder, Melissa Howder's husband.
He's one of the greats.
He's one of the first dirty BJJ doesn't it call?
Yeah, he's an amazing dude. I can't wait to talk to him one of these days.
He's really cool, and he's one of the Melissa, because that's her instructor, coins a lot of his phrases. And one of the things he's really good at coining phrases. And one of the ones he does on his is think street, train sport, practice art. And that was really cool.
Yeah.
That was like that's the way I've thought about it, and he just nailed it. And nailed it. But that's a lot of the things I'm always thinking. So even from so I'm not very rarely they start from here, right? It's going to always start something from standing. And once it starts from standing, I'm not going to get into this pose. It's always going to be this pose. And then so I always think about that when I'm training, like how am I going to start from here? And then just like with anything else, and then the wrestling has helped me with that, because if violence is going to erupt, it's going to be fast and hard.
Yeah, which is what wrestlers are used to.
Which is exactly
that explosive.
Exactly, and that's a big part of it. That's the thinking. So I think a lot of times when you're training, people forget that when we're having fun, I'm allowing you to grab me. Right. I'm allowing, because again, that's how we have fun. That's how we learn. That's how we get sent. But in general, the reality is, oh no, I got to be able to do something where I can nullify a weapon, right, or something like that. So, and then how do I take you down without hurting myself? Is a big part, right? If I can do that, and then, if I do, that's kind of things. Those kind of things I like to work on is how can I take you down that might work out there, but also because we do practice like competition, like train sport. So, how can we have fun with that? How can I take you down without hurting you? Because that's another thing too. Some people don't want to practice stand up anymore because it hurts. But if you're being rough about it, if I'm just going to tackle you, that's a different kind of training. And I'd rather just learn how to. There's ways to take, again, maximum results with minimum effort. That's really been my goal.
Train safe. Train hard, but train safe.
Exactly.
Because we want longevity. Because, I talk to some old school guys sometimes, and they're like, back in the day, we used to do it this way, and I'd be like, well, how come you don't train anymore? Well, my knees and my back, and I'm like, well, how'd you get those? Well, it was through the training. It's like, there's a disconnect. It's like, do you think maybe if you train a little bit more safely, then you can do this until, you want to stop? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So that's my thing, because that's one of the things, like I said, turned me on to martial arts. That thinking that's even where I came up with my name. F's is empowering fitness systems. There's no fight or combat in there. It's just it's just in the sense that it's just empowering because of the training that we do. you know, you do get confident and feel confident you can do something. Fitness is different to everybody, but we do have to be fit in spirit, mind, and body. And the systems, my systems primarily are jiu-jitsu, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, wrestling, and I say hand-to-hand from the people that I've trained with in boxing and the other martial arts I was telling you about. And like, how does that work for me?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
come here.
You know, the martial arts is a lot about, you know, developing a strong character, or about developing self-discipline, self-control, inner strength. You know, has there been something in your life that, you know, you got through it because of your training?
Yeah, you know, life hits us all, right? And then life could be tough. My dad died when I was young and I was lost. At that time, I'd already been, like I said, I was already in the fantasy of martial arts and what it was, and I wanted to train with different people. In high school, like I mentioned before, is when I started delving into wrestling, and it was, again, Pat who really helped me during those times. But in the sense of what kind of person he was. Of being patient but being strong, being respectful but not backing away, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And there was a couple of incidents that reminded me of. And so, and again, because of the training of wrestling in particular, you know, you just you got to push through it. You don't give, but you work hard and then again, after studying different people and reading interviews and whatnot, it just started hitting in. And then so in my 1920s, when I started delving into drugs and alcohol and just really was lost. And but I like to call them my martial arts angels, or my angels, that over the years would come into my life. And so when I was here, it probably stopped me from going deeper for a little bit. Then I might go up a little bit from meeting them and training with them, and then I got lost again, go down, but then somebody else would come in. I think because of martial arts and that, it just made me, and because I knew deep down inside, you know, I don't know, something about it just made me not go deep down, and it's because of martial arts. Like I said, it's hard to explain why.
Okay.
But then, when I finally got clean in 2000, you know, that's when I think part of it was being, okay, I'm going to do this. I hit my bottom, and I'm not. This is it. And you know, finally, you know, just the other day I celebrated 19 years. So I'm pretty happy about that. It's kind of neat, 19 years clean.
Yeah.
And so,
Congratulations,
thank you,
man.
thank you. And and it's really, and I look back, you know, in those 19 years, I have 2 kids. I'm still married. Yeah. My wife, I love you, because she's put up with me because you know, you're immature and you're selfish, and I still am. But martial arts. That's one of the things I dig about martial arts, because if you're really going to study it the way I believe you should, is it's about self. How can I be better?
Yeah.
How can I be better? And I say this, and the wrestling started that a lot. The wrestling, when I first put my feet on the mat, and just the drive, the never give, the you got to push yourself. I tell everybody all the time who wants to compete, I said, you know, you're not in charge of what that person does, or what you don't know what that person's going to do, but you are in charge of yourself. How you take care of yourself, how you eat, how you sleep, how much training you put in, that's all on you. And that's a big part of that. And those lessons that you learn, being respectful with your training partners, all these lessons that we learn here on the mat should transfer out there. For some it doesn't, but it should.
That's true with anything.
Yeah.
Well, sir, I want to thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're a good man and a great martial artist, and I think you're doing some really important things. And really appreciate the friendship, and thank you for spending time with me today.
Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. Like I said, when we first met, I was just eager to train with one of the bullies from the Karate Kid too. But and then just because again, I love training, and I know you know your stuff, and I love training with people that know their stuff and that are open. That's the thing, that are open. It's hard to find people like that, and so I appreciate you, sir.
It's
Thank you.
my honor and pleasure.
Thank you.
And this has been 52 Masters, once again with Professor Efrain Sevilla, my good friend, and we'll see you next time.